무시하고 그래서 이제 근데 지금은 그런 쓰시기가 달라요. 네,
Thanks for that, everyone. And so we've been discussing anger and need to deal with it and develop patience for a few days now. So I thought I'd put it to you, I'd put it out there to ask what so far has been like the kind of most convincing or the best reasons you've seen how to deal with anger, or how to develop patience, and things that you've really seen as kind of suitable, worthwhile, and so forth.
I find when you think about anger and how when you're holding anger, you can't harm the other person, you're really just harming yourself. I find that's a very convincing reason to want to not be angry.
Anger destroys your peace of mind and your health, and so it affects your own well-being, but also the well-being of others. They don't want to be around you. So.
What did you maybe saying is okay, no problem.
Same, but also I feel sad after because of if I explode with anger, then after I'm feeling, I'm not like this, so what can I do to prevent this? So I'm not feeling happy anymore. I'm feeling very not down.
That's why they really want to give up this.
I want everyone, including me, to be happy. So on the other side, then it doesn't make sense to be angry or engage in anger or make others angry. So if I really want everybody's happiness, this is like the way forward.
Nunnery mi sentimentalmente devo lana
It's basically what other people said, that I really feel like sad after like a burst with anger, and that I actually like harming myself and like holding on to this feeling of anger, and it's not any benefit about it.
It drains out my energies and it makes me feel more tired, and then my mind is working very fast like that. Like if I get angry and after that my mind gets really why did I hurt, or my mind start questioning me, and then I have a reason to self-doubt. And if I wouldn't have like been angry to anyone, so state would have been stable.
I think that I always regret after, always, I never was angry and then feel regret about it. And also it's like fake to wanting to do good in life and then to hurt someone else. So just being honest with myself that I'm hurting every time I'm angry. So.
इधर आने के पहले अपना गुस्सा पे बहुत काम किया और पेशेंस पे भी बहुत काम किया। तो ये जब पढ़ रहा है, ऑलरेडी ये भी थोड़ा पढ़ा था पहले, तो थोड़ा आई एम अवेयर ऑफ इट, अच्छा लगता है। लेकिन एक तो जो सिचुएशन था उस पर थोड़ा गुस्सा आता था। जब मैं मैक्लोड में 1 मंथ था, तो उधर जब मेन टेम्पल जाता था तो बहुत टूरिस्ट लोग आता है, ऐसा मेडिटेशन के लिए बैठता है, तो पूरा आके फोटो खींचता है, सब करता है, थोड़ा गुस्सा आता था। और सबका लाइक प्रोस्ट्रेशन कर रहा है तो वीडियो खींचता है, सब करता रहता है। और तारा के रूम पे भी बहुत आता रहता है। लेकिन और मुझे थोड़ा डिसरेस्पेक्ट जैसा भी लगा। लेकिन इधर एक वर्स में है कि for the Buddhas can never be harmed, 64। वो पढ़ने के बाद बहुत लाइट हो गया। So when I was in McLeod, I was going to the main temple every day, and then like there you want to be silent, but every day there are so many tourists coming and taking photos and videos of you, and then also in the main temple making a lot of noise and like everything. I felt it was a bit disrespectful, and I used to get a bit angry with that specific things. I felt like the other anger issues I worked on myself for some time, and also on patience, but that was a bit annoying. But here in verse 64 it says the Buddhas can never be harmed. So when I listened to it, I just felt very light about the entire thing.
वही जो गुस्सा है वो मेरे लिए तो शायद सिर्फ वर्ड है, लेकिन दूसरे इंसान के लिए काफ़ी लाइक पावरफुल इमोशन क्रिएट करता है, जिसकी वजह से उसको मे बी लोअर लेवल्स में या उसको वो अच्छा उसके लिए फ्यूचर लाइफ में नहीं होगा। सो वो एक कॉन्सेप्ट है जो मैं लेके जाना चाहता हूँ तो काफ़ी मुझे उसके लिए भी सोच सकता हूँ।
मतलब दूसरा आपको इज्जत करेंगे तो आपका तो फर्क नहीं है, फिर दूसरे को जो उपाय सांचे करेंगे ये बोला।
I was thinking all the time about the source of your anger, because all the time you are how do you say, pointed to outside all the time. The source is inside us, and I was checking all the discussion about why, how we could think about that, and how when we are angry, destroy all your merits and your peace of mind, I think so. And after that, after some period of anger, you feel some, in some sense, some regret, but at the same time, some feeling, extreme feeling inside you, not understanding why is the real source of that. I think I was thinking all the time about that.
Never had something create more suffering to the others and to myself. Not useful.
가슴 문제는 내 자신을 공부, 이만이만
So we're not, we're not going to be sitting a test or anything, but all this, the way we're discussing right now, it just shows me that you really understood it all quite well, right? Because it's not always easily the case, right? There's a lot of people who, when they think about anger, they really consider it as something useful, something beneficial, something wonderful, even. And so the fact that all of us are kind of thinking about it and really can come to see the faults of anger, the disadvantages of anger, is again something quite amazing, right? Because it's not just the anger, this habit coming from this life, but we've had from countless previous lives, we've had this very strong habit of developing anger, and so we have this very strong habit or habituation to it. So being able to see past that and trying to striving towards abandoning it to some extent is actually pretty incredible. And of course, we're not going to be able to just abandon it immediately. It's not that we just decide to abandon it and it goes away. But by even just beginning by thinking about it in a negative fashion like this, then we can start to work on it, right? We can start to work on reducing our anger. And likewise, we know that from now on, when we're out and about, and if we end up meeting sort of conditions that might spark our anger, we know that we need to be careful. So all of that is really, really wonderful. And so if we were having a test, you all got very high grades. Right, so again, we really should think that anger itself is not beneficial in any kind of way. And so in terms of its disadvantages or its faults, and really there's so many that we can come to think of, both in terms of this life and future life. So whether we believe or not in future life is kind of up to us, but then we discuss about how it has its ramifications in terms of taking rebirth in the lower realms and the hell realms and so forth. But even setting that aside, really just in terms of this life, we can see how harmful anger can be, right? That people who get angry a lot, then it really creates this harmony amongst friends. It separates friends, it creates problems among them. But even for ourselves, in terms of our health, right? So if we're chronically angry, it even is able to harm our own health. And even like when we're eating food, right? If we're super angry and we're eating, then it actually can take the taste out of the food. We can't sleep well at night, and so actually, just considering our own health, it's very detrimental. And then also in terms of how people like that are viewed in society, right? No one goes, oh, you're such an angry person, wow, wonderful, let's go hang out with them, yeah? Right? So if someone is really angry all the time, people kind of tend to stay away from that person, and they don't really like to spend time with them. So since we all want to have a harmonious society, community around us and get on with people and have happiness and so forth, then we really see that anger is not the means to get that.
你这个呢，你是小的生活的，别的现在在些人最懂忙的，忙的就都什么，是吧？那不然忙不起嘛，后来就上忙不起，当然那个空头就帮着处理是吧？啊，这个帮助这个来下些那个，开始能帮我们这些开始那个，你的我还是这个呗，这修草种的，那个。 지난 이번에 예감이 지면이 있다, 그렇죠? 그래야 내 지난 공부를 직권도 이거 애가 무슨도 쉬라고 그러는 거, 가시게 이렇게 보고 이렇게 뭐예요? 그 가르치는 것도 기빵 가오리가 그 주제들 진짜는 지금 리바는 아니고 가시게 동호하고 뭐예요? 근데 이게 말해야 돼. 그래서 그거보다 근데 지금 그만 간단히 그냥 무슨 교육이 된다. 아니
And so then, abandoning anger is really not an easy job, right? So that's why it's just a simple word, right? Just anger. But in terms of actually thinking about how harmful it is in terms of abandonment, it's really not that easy. It's not like Shantideva can come along and just say, get rid of your anger. That doesn't work, right? So that's why we have all these various verses which are giving us all these different ways of thinking and different examples and different debates, because we have different doubts that might arise, and so trying to work with those. And so, anger is just this one little word, but in order to really abandon it, in order to get to grips with it, we need all these various ways of thinking. And then on top of these, you have all these masters who have written very long commentaries on these texts, and it's because we need all this different ways of thinking and reasons and examples and so forth to really be able to work on abandoning anger.
这下能让自己一个人去了，然后在那儿可成一个地方，可能让你他们那个，就是给人家的，但是也是你们那个，我当然去了，你这个街道，叫他们这个土地，那老中央不去了，上面老中央不去了，基本上了，那种看得走起来，哇，现在看到看了，完全的就看了，就是人那里不得我那个写的，如果到那里了，都是写了，现在好嘛，不去了。 그냥 맞이는 내가 저희 교회 있었는데 처음 만들어. 나는 저희 그냥 맞이는 저는 너무 가야 하거든요. 그러니까 나는 정말 맞이는 가만히 무슨 수치고 싶다는 거 참 클라르다. 아니 기계도 상식대로 저거 교환에 가다. 정말 주로 클라르고 그래서 근데 아니 그런 지원은 아니지만 뭐 이제 지도도 이거 맞이는 지도도 그래서 저기 배우로 사정도 되는 그런 수도 自己的可能创新是吧？来到的，其他嘛现在也是这个推出上面推荐这种的，是吧？跟中国人家推出了，理解嘛，这个就嘛现在就是个来口了。那个，他说前头写了就生产，看的是结果，所以我看到了，就看到结果了，看到这个里面的，等于这个当像自己可能是个需求了的，是吧？你看这个，我这个不要好了，你出来这个。 修的中年的不可生病不고반으로 주주도 시고 아슬라저 셔를 하고 디난 생기거든 저기 가서 콘로브라 하는 거 지부지부 간데스 방 방다 하래 콘로 돈 간데스 지고 간데 방 근데 저 아니미디 생각은 좋아요.
So it's the same we can think in terms of being students, and then often students in the monasteries and so forth, we get advice not just from our teachers, but the teachers we see every day and the teachers in the schools, but just all these random people like our parents or whoever, older people that we meet, and the advice we always get is, oh, you should study really well, study well, study well. But it's like, but why should we study well, and how do we study well? And so just saying to someone study well is not going to really help them that much to kind of generate that motivation or to know how to study well. So really what one needs is to be able to have it really well explained to them. So that's what the teacher's job is, right? To really talk about the benefits of studying, the faults of not studying, how one goes about studying, and so on and so forth, to get that motivation, right? So they can talk to you about, you can do really well on your test, and that later you might get the job that you want, or you can think about how much your parents have spent for the education, and so not to let this opportunity go to waste, and so on and so forth. But also just thinking about the benefits, right? Without a proper education, maybe we just even want to write a letter and don't know how to write very well, or to do business, you want to write a simple list and you don't really know how to do that. So there are so many benefits, but it's only just by knowing how and why that we would really generate this motivation to do so. So in the same way here, if we're just being told, just get rid of your anger, and then we're kind of like, we don't know how to do it, and we don't really have the motivation to do it. It doesn't really benefit us. That's why we have all these reasonings talking about the benefits and the faults and so forth. So that's just an example, right, of the studying, so we apply to here. So then the next section we get into verse 112, right? So it says in our outlines, so seeing them as like the teacher, so teacher meaning the Buddhist community. So in the extensive explanation it says it was explained in the sutra that Buddhas and sentient beings are equally fields of merit. So it said in one particular sutra something like the sutra that thoroughly indicates the Dharma, something like that. And so in that sutra, so it's the Buddha's own teachings, where he said that actually the Buddhas and sentient beings are equal in terms of being fields of merit. Right? So what does that mean? So in general, we don't regard Buddhas and sentient beings as equal, right? We always think of the Buddhas and we think, the Buddhas have attained all these realizations and have abandoned all the faults, and so they're real. If we make offerings to them, prostrations and all these different practices, then we gain a lot of merit, and so they're incredible. Whereas sentient beings, they don't have this, so it doesn't. They don't. If I a practice towards that, it won't have the same effect. But actually, we should see them as equal in terms of our practice of virtue, because again, although in terms of the Buddhas, it's really mostly down to our faith, and then for these various practices which involve faith in the Buddhas on the one hand, and then the various teachings which came to us from the Buddhas that we are able to practice. So that's the way that they benefit us. But sentient beings are equal because they also benefit us by being the objects of our practice. Right? So, for example, right now we're talking about patience. So we wouldn't be able to practice patience if we didn't have sentient beings around to be the objects of our patience. So in that way, they also become the causes of our virtue. So in that way, when we think about a field of merit, so it's not just merit, but we have the field is what we accumulate to accumulations of merit and wisdom with respect to. And so in terms of that, we are really the cause of virtue. And so in that respect, we say that Buddhas and sentient beings are actually the same. So then the verse itself says, therefore the Muni has said that the field of sentient beings is similar to the Buddha field, right? So in that sense like you described, whereby they are becoming the cause for us to develop the various types of merit that we need in order to attain enlightenment. So by way of becoming a cause for our enlightenment, both sentient beings and Buddhas are therefore seen to be similar in that way of being that field of merit. So then the second outline establishing that through reasoning is the first outline says one's ultimate wishes are attained through faith in the Buddha and sentient beings. So not sure if faith is being applied to both Buddhas and sentient beings, or we can say that maybe it's a bit weird to have faith in sentient beings, so we can say we have faith and respect, right? So by having faith towards the Buddhas and respecting sentient beings, then we actually are attaining all of our ultimate wishes and goals as well. So the verse says, for many who have pleased them have thereby reached perfection, right? So by, whether it is by pleasing the Buddhas or by pleasing sentient beings, by practicing in that way, then one is able to, when it says to reach perfection, meaning to attain the goals of both self and others, the two welfares of self and others, and thereby attain enlightenment in that way. So, and like in that way, thinking that since they are both Buddhas and sentient beings, both are a part of that, both become causes for that, then it is not really suitable to accept some but reject, accept the Buddhism and reject sentient beings.
这里我们的一个在一个人他是就是他也可以做，这个他是原来那个自己个人找这个中间嘛，台湾的意思，中间我就是中间来的，中间把要的他差点可能这个吧，要的아니 사제 출근 들어가다가 나도 사제 고마토에 가지 주다 또 빨리 이제 진짜 내가 알았다 나오고 있어 아니 나들이 이제 이게 시가 이거이나 사제를 쓰는 얘기가 나오는 게 내가 이제 이 시가 이거이나 아니 나도 사제를 근데 얘를 그리지라 얘를 그리고 사제랑 그거잖아요 그거죠 얘는 신경라면 신경을 그거죠 말하면 근데 저 아니 이 가르를 근데 이 가르를 한 끼가 들어 끼를 그거 주고 지치려 말해 근데 이 가르를 해야 돼 이 축이 좋아져.
So then the next verse itself says, a Buddha's qualities are accomplished from sentient beings and the conquerors alike. So why do I not respect sentient beings in the same way I respect the conquerors? Right? So the conquerors meaning the Buddhas, right? The sentient beings. And so, as we just said, both the Buddhas and sentient beings are the same in acting as the causes for our enlightenment. So, being the same in that way, why do we have this faith and reverence to the Buddhas, and we don't treat sentient beings in the same way? That's the question we have.
미국에서 똑같은데 너무 저쪽에서 아니들을 바꿔가지고 저쪽에서 그래서 우리가 저거하는 데서 아니 유대 민양도 있으니까 대박 충분해서 뭔가 밑에 빵 지상까지 그래서 그니 유대가 그거를 사실 때 유대 시기로 해서 미시가 정말 너무 같이 사실 보면서 그 미시가는 내주도 네 사실은 누가 먹는 시간을 내면 그니 좋은 미소가 근데 무슨 Gonpa Gonpa digging to the summer somebody imitate the human tapang. Today is catching the body. I did a funny order. I didn't make a dish for you. I mean, tonight is Mila in the big day room. Couldn't be there and to the 이 저는 이제 도바사에 그 도바사에 빵도 밑에까지 papang. 밑에까지는 되게 많이 들어요. 밑에 papang.
So then the third section here, refuting objections. So again, this is kind of like, we hear this reasoning being presented to us, but then we might have all sorts of doubts, like, oh no, hang on a minute, right? So first we have these kind of doubts spelled out for us in terms of the outline. So the first one is refuting that it is incorrect to cultivate faith with them equally, since their qualities are not the same, right? So someone might have this doubt, right? Well, they're not really the same, right? Because there's such a big difference in their qualities, right? The Buddhas have all these qualities in terms of being able to benefit sentient beings and lead them out of suffering and all this kind of stuff. They're skilled in means in that, whereas sentient beings don't have these qualities. So it's not really the same. So it's not suitable to have faith for sentient beings in the same way, right? So the first section is to try to abandon that doubt.
사제 걸어가는 상담 쇼에다가 나디니 사진과 이가 계획이 채워를 이것도 이내로 봐. 계획이 채워 사제지 그런 이제 이거를 너와 숨지다 사제니까 항상 나도 말하고 사제의 주기다 인데이가 손주로 돼서 손배 아니 대발 주로 공부를 세상하고 대발을 집어지면 먹는 비교가 있어요. 공부를 해서 사제지 인데라 사실 장에 비슷해 승계라는 외비에서 성타요. 그래서 사제 외라 주의 체계 승계라는 자 근데 항상 승계는
So then the second outline, even just the outlines are telling us so much already about the debate here. So the second outline saying, since having greater faith in both is equally the cause for enlightenment, it is suitable to cultivate faith for them equally. So as we said, the reason why it's suitable to have faith is rather because they equally are causes for our enlightenment, right? Whether it's sentient beings or whether it's the enlightened Buddhas, they are the same or they're equal in the way that they serve as the causes for our enlightenment, and that's why it is suitable to have faith or respect for them both. And then the third outline says that it is suitable to have faith in sentient beings, since the merit of making offerings to sentient beings who possess just a fraction of the Buddha's qualities is limitless. So we make offerings to the Buddhas because they have all these limitless qualities, but actually also the sentient beings are kind of a fraction of that, right? And a fraction of something limitless is still something pretty good, right? So again, getting back to the root verses for the first of these three outlines, then we have that they are not equal in the quality of their intentions, but only in the results that they produce. So in this respect, they also have excellent qualities and are therefore said to be equal, right? So in actual fact, right, so it is the case that they are not equal in terms of their qualities, right? So the Buddhas have attained all these excellent qualities that us as ordinary sentient beings do not have, so that's just a fact. But however, when we think in terms of the results that they produce, right, so it is due to having faith in the Buddhas, but likewise due to having this respect for sentient beings, they equally serve as to produce the effect of Buddhahood, right? So whether it is the Buddhas in terms of their teachings and in terms of the object of offerings and things like that, or whether it is sentient beings in terms of being the objects of our practice of patience and so forth, they equally act as the causes that produce the result of our own enlightenment. And so it is in that respect that we say that they too have these excellent qualities and are therefore equal. So then the next verse in half says, whatever merit comes from revering one with a loving mind is due to the greatness of sentient beings. Similarly, the merit of having faith in the Buddhas is due to the greatness of the Buddhas. Due to both having a part in establishing enlightened qualities, they are asserted to be equal. Right? So on the one hand, we have sentient beings, and their kind of greatness, as it says, is because they act as the cause or the object for our various practices, such as patience, or also when we develop in the minds of love and compassion, we have those with respect to sentient beings. So without the sentient beings, we wouldn't develop love and compassion. So in that way, as the objects of our various these practices, they have that greatness. Whereas on the other hand, we also have the Buddhas and their greatness in terms of other sets of practices like generating faith and so forth. So in that respect, since they both have this part in accomplishing or establishing these enlightened qualities, they are equal in that regard. And that's kind of really the case, right? If we had Buddha in front of us and we had someone we really don't like in front of us, we wouldn't want to dedicate faith towards them. We would just kind of want to ignore them at best, right? So, whereas for the Buddha, they're the object of my practice and this and that. So, it really just seems like that, but that's kind of our natural way of seeing things. So, in order to overcome that, then we have this kind of ways of thinking to see the equality of the two. So I'm trying to kind of make a bit of a summary here, because again, we're going through all these different types of reasonings, and they might just, if you continue going with that, it might end up sounding a bit the same, right? It sounds a bit samey all the time, and so why do we keep having to go over it again and again? But it's kind of tackling different aspects of the way that anger and patience kind of play out in our mind. And so with respect to this particular section, it's really kind of getting us to think about the way that we regard these different people, different like the Buddha and the sentient beings, and how we have this kind of bias with respect to them, right? So it really kind of comes up that, even if we get Buddhas, we just have someone we like and someone we don't like in front of us, then, if I have some kind of thing to give, then obviously I'm going to give it to the one I like, and not give it to the one I don't like, right? And if I have, we naturally have these predispositions in terms of the way that we regard people in certain ways. So this, in particular, tries to get us to think about that actually, regardless of their qualities and who they are and so forth, in terms of playing a part in the development and our development of good qualities, they are actually equal in that regard.
상제나 진짜 상제가 배인데 제가 어디서 자천 마셔서 또 상제가 유리 심어도 있죠라. 근데 상제 인데는 저기 자천 마셔서 아니 대체로 되지. 타이어. 근데 이제 아니 가야인데 그냥 나가 상제는 이제 요 말을 사회에서 벌어지려고 그러더라. 상제나 받아서 안가는데 그냥 받아서 그냥 로사고 이렇게 상제에 이제 가려고 아니 근데 상제를 이제 자신보다 이제 상제는 그냥 이제 자신을 무슨 이 사람은 상제 친구를 왜 그러는 거가 그거 이제 친구를 이거 있나요? 근데 이 차세지로가 차세를 따가 사진을 나가서 사진을 이제 그래서 보면 작업하다 이유는 하다 참 숨겨져 있었으니까 먼저 사제 지금 숨겨져 된 거고 그러면 그런 아주 가장 하나 사제 이주통은 장축생이라 장축생에 그대주는 숨기기 중요한 들을 이제죠. 숨기기 중요한 상황이 얘기되는 또 내려주고요. 제가 숨기지면 성사제는 숨기기 중요한 상황 가서 제가 숨기는 상황에 사제기 들에 유치하고 이거가 근데 이제 아니 내게 아니 숨기는 아니 사제기 유리 차시에 이유를 했어. 근데 이 반대쪽에서는 저기 수수가 상당히 있는 하나 대로 취해서 강순 진짜 강순 표현 중에 진짜 내내에서는 내 갈래지요 딱 하려고 숨기는 내 갈래지요에서는 강순을 내 강순에 감정으로 그걸 근데 강순은 다른 거보다 가리는 있잖아 가리는 참아야 되는 거지요. 나도 숨기라는 게 연대를 쳐야 돼. 여러분들 자기 그것들이 일단 쳐야 돼.
So then the third section is again talking therefore about that they are also equal because of possessing a part of those qualities, right, or a fraction of those qualities. And so the root verse says, no one is equal to the Buddhas who are limitless oceans of good qualities. Even if the three realms were offered, it would be insufficient in paying reverence to those few beings in whom a mere fraction of the good qualities, of the unique assemblage of good qualities appears. So what this is saying is that, okay, so we understand that the Buddhas have this, like as it says, this limitless ocean of good qualities, right? They have attained all the qualities of abandoned all faults and so forth. So we can't really, kind of compare that, right? They have this amazing, all these amazing qualities. But then sentient beings, even just possessing a fraction of that, or even just possessing a part of that, is still become worthy of reverence, is still become worthy of offering. Because again, this is really something quite amazing. Even a part of that is still something quite amazing. And for example, we say, oh, how do they possess a part of that? Well, we said, well, one of the main causes for enlightenment is this mind of bodhicitta, right? And so, in order for us to develop this mind of bodhicitta, we need sentient beings, right? Without sentient beings around, we wouldn't be able to think, oh, may I be able to liberate sentient beings and lead them towards enlightenment, right? So, sentient beings are one condition, one cause for the development of that mind of enlightenment. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. So, in that way, they possess a part, they are a cause for our own enlightenment, and in that sense, become worthy of reverence as well. So then, finally we have one verse by way of summary to summarize this point for us, which says, therefore, since sentient beings have a part in giving rise to the supreme Buddha qualities, surely it is correct to revere sentient beings since they are similar in merely this respect. Right? So as we said, since sentient beings become this cause for our own enlightenment, then having, as it were, a part of giving, they have their part, or they have that, and become the cause for generating Buddha qualities, then for that also makes them objects of reverence, or objects of offerings in the same way that Buddhas are, right? So they both have equally become an object of reverence on the one hand in Buddhas and on the one hand sentient beings, because they both act as the causes for our enlightenment. So then we have the next set of outlines which say that they should be respected due to faith in the teacher, in the Buddha. And so being respectful due to seeing them as one's own child, right? So this is often an image that's relating to compassion, where we see sentient beings as if they're one's own child, right? There's a very great closeness in that. And so establishing the main method needs to become enlightened, and so it's identifying the main method, right? Gratitude towards and repaying the kindness of the Buddha. Right? So in general, we can speak about there being the wisdom side, right, where we talk about an understanding and realizing emptiness. But together with that, we also have the method side, which is all the practices related with compassion and so forth. And so here we're talking about more the method side in terms of how they become an object of that, right? How to develop compassion in relation to them. So then this first is in terms of gratitude towards and repaying the kindness of the Buddha. So of course the Buddhas have been incredibly kind to us in all these various ways, and similar to how we were discussing before in terms of the method of generating bodhicitta, right? So in that case as well, we have reflecting upon the kindness of the Buddha and then wishing to repay that kindness, right? So it's often the case that if we really reflect upon people's kindness, we naturally generate this wish to repay that kindness. Right? And it's not a transactional thing, but more a wish to really to repay that. And so likewise also not just with the mother, but also thinking about the kindness shown to us by the Buddhas, also thinking about how best to repay that kindness. So really this particular section is giving us reasons for, again, why we should be respecting sentient beings, right? And so, so the verse says, furthermore, what way is there to repay those who grant immeasurable benefit to and other reliable friends of sentient beings, other than by pleasing sentient beings, right? So in terms of the Buddhas, right, who are completely unbiased in respect to how they see the different sentient beings, regardless of whether people help them or not, they're always there to only benefit sentient beings, and they have this compassion towards them like a mother towards her own child. So, seeing as the Buddhas observe them, see sentient beings in that way, it would kind of become a bit weird for us to then have disrespect and to get angry with these very same sentient beings, whereas the best way to please the Buddhas, the best way to repay that kindness is actually by pleasing sentient beings in that way, like that. So of course, in general we said there have been limitless Buddhas, right? But in particular we can think about the kindness of Buddha Shakyamuni. But then kind of the doubt may arise, well, how has Buddha Shakyamuni been kind to me? I've never even met him or anything, right? So in what way is he really kind? But we think that on the basis of the teachings that he gave, and then that spread to all these various different Indian masters who wrote treatises like this, and then that spread to all these different countries and through all this, the whole lineage, and it eventually arrives down to us. And now the fact that we have all these texts and different things to study that show us kind of the way, right? They're showing us what we should practice and what we should abandon and how to do it and all these various kind of methods. And so that in and of itself is just an incredible kindness, right? Without that, we would just be, kind of left to our own devices, probably engaging in a lot more non-virtue and not knowing how to properly engage in virtue, right? So this is kind of, for example, like if we want to climb a particular mountain, we've never been there before, right? Then we don't really know what's involved. So if someone comes along and tells, oh, there's no water up there, so you should bring water, and it's kind of cold, so bring good shoes and wear warm clothes, and there's a shop near the bottom, but up there, no, so buy your stuff down below. And so if they give us all this advice, so even though we've never been there before, we can be really well prepared, and so that in that way they're very kind to us. And so similarly, the Buddha has been kind to us by giving us all these teachings and all these methods that we can now think about and practice. Yeah, because that can be definitely right? I mean, we see the Buddhas as kind of really high and off somewhere out there we don't know, and so it can be difficult to see how we are connected to them in what way. So now in the present context, right, we're talking in the Buddhist context, that's what we're saying, the Buddha all the time. But really it can be, whatever your particular belief system is, and it can be, you can relate it to that, right? So whether one is a Christian or a Hindu or Muslim, and whatever kind of authority or whoever is the one that is kind of showing the path, right, in that particular religion, then again, one can apply this way of thinking in the sense of thinking about the great kindness of that. Right, the great kindness. So every religion has its kind of text, right? So for the Christians it's the Bible, and for the Muslims it's the Quran, and so on and so forth. And they all carry the essential advice or the teachings of that religion. And so, thinking in a similar manner, we can really think about how incredibly kind it is for those teachings to be able to come to us and for us to be able to practice. How the incredible kindness that's involved in that, right? So it's really not a case of thinking, this is the best, this one is better than this one or that one, and this is the best religion or whatever, because it's really kind of like food. You can't say that rice is the best food, right? It just that doesn't really make much sense. Some people like rice, some people don't. Some people it's good for them, some it's not. So whichever religion you choose to practice, that's really down to you. But it's also very important to be able to kind of understand it on the basis of one's own religion, because their message tends to be quite similar. But then also in terms of all of us as being sentient beings living on one planet, we have to get along, then it's good to be able to communicate about these things and learn from one another and really understand that at the end of the day we're kind of ultimately practicing towards the same goal. And so, some people must say, Buddhism is the best, or Christianity is the best, or whatever, but then it's not really about even listening to those kind of things, because at the end of the day, it's really something that we, for ourselves, need to come to realize, right? And so that happens and depends upon, studying that particular religious system and, thinking about it for ourselves and thinking, okay, what are the benefits of practicing this? What, how does this make sense? How does this work? And so on and so forth. So it's not about, it's similar to if someone says to us, oh, they're a really good person, or they're not such a good person, and we just follow whatever people say, then it's not really a very reliable way to do it. Rather, we're intelligent beings, and so we can think about things and analyze things and come to our own conclusions. So that's really very important.
That's very
So now we can go to the questions and answers. Some questions?
How to strengthen one's belief in afterlife or reincarnation?
Sorry?
How to strengthen one's belief in afterlife or reincarnation?
Just to the Geshema
दूसरा जन्म में कैसे विश्वास जागृत करें कि कैसे विश्वास करें कि सच में होता है
who they are and combat they and so can do the cheap combat in the relationship to let it learn yourself. And also change that too. Very now take the top of the relationship. And who did the much attention. Or chief in the one chamber, killing each other. They are in what they are, good. They use it. You know the armor in the house. It's not the day of the only however, but they were the teach the job. My young lady who maybe containing. This other must say that Lama should be allowed to do the Papa chat senior or the young and the cousin as a children, calling now to take it up to him, but
so the main source for establishing it through reasoning we find in a particular text called the Pramanavartika, and so that the whole second chapter you find all sorts of reasoning to establish the existence of past and future lives, right? Because of course, a lot of us kind of have a lot of doubts with respect to this. We see, many people around us, we see them die, and they kind of go away, and we don't see them again. So how is it that they take rebirth, or are they kind of? So we might, have sorts of doubts about that. And on the one hand, you have sources from the Buddha saying, okay, it's possible to take rebirth and can retake rebirth as an animal, and so on and so forth. But in terms of really coming to terms with it ourselves, and one useful thing is, there are many examples these days of children remembering their past lives, right? So there's kind of examples of this, like there's a particular woman and she must have died quite young, but then she, as she, took rebirth again as a young child, she was able to remember all these details about her previous family. And so eventually she was kind of led to where she wanted to go, and she found the other family, and she was able to recognize people. Oh, my dad's name is this, my mom's name is that, and knowing where everything is. And so nowadays, apparently, she's been taking care of these two families. She has two families. And likewise, knowing a particular nun in Ladakh that knew about this child who, again, was kind of insisting on going to this particular place, and he knew, okay, we had this kind of house, and we had these animals, and this, and eventually they took him there, and he was able to say, oh, this got this kind of aged, and this used to be over there, and all sorts of details that they would otherwise not know. So in this way, thinking about these experiences of people who remember, and we also find these in kind of the reincarnated lamas, right? That there are many teachers, even kind of this holiness, to be recognized, they have to kind of identify all these objects from their previous rebirth, right? So they have all these objects placed in front of them, and they're able to remember which objects belong to them. So kind of that's one way to think about it.
I have a question. It's not really related to the teachings, but since this morning we briefly talked about the sleep. I've noticed that every time I'm on retreat, I have nightmares. Like, it never happens like in normal life, but every time I'm doing retreats, I have nightmares. But I also spoke with someone on retreat, and they said that it's happening the same to them. So I was just wondering, like, what's the reason for that, if you can answer that.
지난 찍는 가도 니문데 나 소속 상담하고 싶다. 그 니문 전화기 자라도 전지에는 한 정도 되라는 건데. 아서 자라도 자주 쉬지. 이제 그들은 기부치 거. 한 번도 몰라셔도. 네, 상담. 근데 이거 상담 전화기 시비는 한개만 나오지. 신의 모여서도 집다로 거기서. 나는 이런 거 수술이 이제 다 이몸이 지나다 이만큼 나서 그런데 이제 좀 상관없는 집이다. 그래서 이런 다 같이 해서도 이런도 가서 이만 주는 거는 이거 이런 시간 이런 시간 미도 오신 이런 거 사실 이런 거 론이 제스는 이제 미도 네 그거가 무슨 맛이야? 야, 이번에 거들은 상관은 이런 거는 이제 잠도 이거도 얘네 그런 이런 식으로 따라가 부자 따라가 그거에나 약간 식으로 가고 이제 싫어요.
So yeah, we don't really have like much regard for the dreams and stuff like that. It's they kind of regard it as something that's just illusion-like. It's not real, right? Because in our dream we can fly, we can do all sorts of things. It's not really real. So there's really no need to kind of get overexcited or liking the things, but likewise disliking them in a particular way or fearing them in a particular way. Because really, a lot of the time it's just to do with whatever we were doing in that particular time. So a lot of the time we think about something in the day and it occupies a lot of our mind, we'll end up dreaming about it. If we really like a particular object, we might even kind of dream about losing it in the night, or all sorts of things like that. So it's a lot to do with what we end up spending our time thinking about during the day. But it has happened, there's one strange thing, like it has happened to me before, like I had a dream and then there was a particular person in it and I didn't know who it was, but then like 2 years later I meet this person and I'm like, oh wait, where do I know this person from? They don't recognize me, but I was like, where do I know that person from? But either way, it's kind of like, it's not something to pay too much attention to.
zamdana도 수능으로 사야 그거라고 이제 수능으로 그거로 나와. zam들 이제 마시지 못해 쓰기라. 아직은 이내 두개가 지나면 집가도 가는 이게랑 비슷하게 그런 이제 보면 계십니까? 그런 이제 보면 지난 레벨을 싫은 거 다시 내가 지난 소리 다 이게 다 이제를 가는 거 없잖아. 아니 야 싫어. 그냥 나 이제 좀 죽으라.
But so whenever these kind of frightful or different things come up in the dream, then like all sorts of obstacles or things like that coming up in the dream, then the best thing we can do if we can is kind of develop compassion for if we're able to, right? So it is something that we are able to do if we can, but like developing compassion in the dreams. That would be the best way to react to these kind of things if we're able to.
많이 조금은 주문을 그대로 해주셔서 아마에 짓다이 지금 짓다이 개고싶고 많이 그래도 나를 나가지 니지로 나를 납사를 아마 이때 투스 그건 그래야지 그러나 그거를 개로지죠 아니 나는 다 투셔서 진짜 아마 나야 맞아 개고싶지만 이런 데
But sometimes we really do believe our dreams are true, right? So it can happen like that. So I had an example of this where, like in the monastery, usually we don't have a lot of time to sleep in the afternoon, but it was Saturday, it was a holiday, and so I was kind of lay down in the afternoon, and I went to sleep, and I must have had a particularly kind of realistic dream, and in that, someone kind of said to me, oh, your mum's passed away. And so I'm like, no, that can't be right. And then another person in the dream again said, like, oh, your mom passed away. And so after a few people saying them to, the doubt kind of arose, oh, maybe it is the case. And then, she kind of asked them questions about, well, how did she die? And it's some kind of a machine that separates, different types of grains. So she fell into that. And then she died from that. And so but it was a very realistic dream. And then even when she kind of woke up, it was still kind of like, oh, maybe it really happened. And so she went around, and there's certain traditions around people dying that you would do, and nothing was happening like any people around it. So, and then eventually also got to meet the two people who in the dream told me that they had passed away, and they were very relaxed and as if nothing had happened. So then it seemed like, okay, maybe it's a bit strange. And then eventually I got to talk to my mom, and again, obviously, found out it's not true. But at the time, it seemed so realistic, right? So sometimes the dreams do seem really real, but again, it's just something that's kind of illusionary. So, and then there can be all sorts of factors leading to us having dreams, right? Whether good or bad. And so sometimes it can just be to do with your posture, and some people say that if they have their hand here, then it can kind of lead to having more dreams. Or and in general, when the sleep is kind of more light, we tend to have more dreams, right? And if we're really deep in sleep, we don't have any dreams. But for example, like when we kind of wake up quite early, but we still try to continue sleep, and the sleep is very light, right? So then we can have a lot of dreams. Also, if you're lying outside somewhere and you're not totally comfortable, then that can be quite light sleep and you can dream. But regardless, it's just not something that really one should worry about too much, right? Because they're not real. Any questions?
Yeah. I was just curious. So, if you find you have a habitual pattern towards getting angry at your teachers, which obviously is the first way to redeem, you can create them. As Shantideva says, every moment you get angry at your teacher, you spend that in your own hell. So, what is the best way to purify that? To generate pure Guru devotion, and then to accumulate the merit, maybe also the merit you have lost.
이 주연쇼를 두고 말하는 윤대죠. 윤대죠. 이게 앞으로 이제는 리뷰쇼를 써놓다 보니까 이 대박을 하시고 리뷰를 깝죠. 리뷰 되는 사람은 리뷰를 깝죠. 그래서 리뷰쇼를 써놓으면 되겠지. 내 계시잖아요. 예상하고 지난 뒤 부주시 동안 이 나라기 주인이 나라기 예마다 나라기 지금 이제 실시간 하고 시작하는 거 나라기 나라기 내기만 문제도 그러니까 남아서 사진 보고 나라데 그저 친구를 가면은 사진을 넣었다는 카드 이제 무슨 그 그래서 나마디 만들어 디버를 메시지가 다티니로 시대고라 세상에 사람들 가르치 보니까 제나 나마도 나가야 되는 저녁에 내셔 따야 사람을 가르치 보니까 소리 수준에 어제도 있었다 아니야 나마도 진짜 만지고 있지 무슨 따라서 지금 그래서 상상은 주거지는 나이 이거 비싸죠.
So then, in general, with respect to our Lama, then we don't know kind of not all Lamas are enlightened beings, but so whether they have faults, they have qualities, whatever it is, then we should definitely focus on their qualities rather than focusing on their faults, right? Because whatever we focus on, that's going to be the main thing that we see. Right? So if we are focusing only on the faults, then that's going to kind of pervade it, and we're going to be able to see only faults. Whereas if we're able to just focus on the good qualities, then that is what's going to pervade, and we're able to see the good qualities. So likewise, seeing that since it really depends on our mind in such a way, then really it's partly one's own kind of shortcoming that it is due to our own attachment and anger and so forth that we kind of develop this wrong way of seeing the Lama in this way. So that's one way to think about it in terms of how to see the Lama's qualities. But also in terms of thinking about the Lama's kindness, then you can think about how incredibly kind the Lama is to us. Because again, we didn't get the chance to personally meet the Buddha, right? But then the Lama acts as the kind of the messenger from the Buddha that is able to convey that message or convey those teachings to us in a personal way. So in that way, being the direct link between the Buddha and his teachings and us, they are incredibly, incredibly kind to us. So in those two ways, thinking in terms of the kindness, but also in terms of the qualities, one should kind of have this good way of relating to the spiritual teacher. And with respect to whatever kind of negativities one has created, then again, just thinking about those and developing regret with respect to those is again the way to purify them. So let's dinner, we'll retire, to page 30. So we're all studying about developing patience and not getting angry, but if we get very, very hungry,